A powerful GOP senator now demanding some answers from Apple in a letter to CEO Tim Cook, the third-ranking Republican. Commerce Committee Chair John Thune looking for answers for Apple's self-admitted practice of slowing down those older iPhones. Chairman Thune joins us first this morning on CNBC. Mr. Chairman, it's good to have you with us. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Carl. Good morning.
I guess the question is, what are your key questions and what has the response been from the company?
Well, we're hoping to get a response from the company, but basically it's to find out exactly what they are doing, how they're informing consumers about this. As you noted, they have now acknowledged that they have been slowing these processing speeds with a purpose, at least stated purpose, of prolonging battery life. But part of the thing that we want to get at is the transparency issue. If they deny that they're engaging in planned obsolescence, in other words, trying to force people to buy the next phone, but we want to make sure through our role as oversight that that's true. And secondly, to find out why they haven't been more transparent about this. And we think it's important that consumers know what's going on, and that if they are doing this, that they know as well that they need to buy a new battery, that's why.
What do you think the consequences could be if, in fact, their answers are not satisfactory?
Well, obviously, this is a consumer protection issue, and clearly we have a role to try and get the facts. We'll make decisions based upon what they return in terms of answers and responses to these questions. We aren't ruling anything out at this point. If we aren't satisfied with the responses, obviously we could have a hearing at some point and elevate this further. But I'm hopeful that we'll get the responses that we desire. If the answers that they give we feel are not adequate to what we think consumers deserve, then obviously we'll look at other options.
Well, that would be my question there. If you conclude that, in fact, the transparency was lacking and customers weren't notified in a proper way, would there be an effort to set some kind of standards here for all companies in terms of what they need to do?
Well, I think that could be ultimately something that would transpire from this. Again, we're very early on in this. They just acknowledged after the holidays that this is actually happening, which was an admission that we think was long overdue. But that being the case, we at least now want to find out what they are doing to inform consumers. They now say that they have lowered the price of a replacement battery from $79 down to about $29. But the fact remains there are a lot of unanswered questions about this practice, and obviously I think that consumers have a right to know, and so we're going to make sure that Apple is forthcoming, is responsive, and then we'll take additional steps as necessary.
Senator, what would you say to those that worry that more government involvement in corporate issues with big tech companies like Apple could potentially stifle innovation down the road? There is some concern that is happening.
Well, I'm somebody who believes in a light touch. I'm not in favor of the heavy hand of government. We have too much of that in too many areas of our economy today. But I think it's important that there be transparency. And I think from a consumer standpoint, we have a lot of consumers out there who buy Apple products, and when they sometimes they'll upgrade those products, but if they, in this case, if they're throttling these processing speeds and slowing down people's processing speeds, and there was any effort as a result of that to try and force people into buying the next iPhone, the next upgrade, they need to know that, and they also need to know what's happening to their battery life and whether or not they need to replace a battery. Those are just fundamental issues that I think that consumers have a right to know when they purchase a product. And so we're not suggesting the heavy hand of government or regulation here, but simply the need for transparency in the marketplace.
You use the words light touch, which have been used a lot in various cases by the FCC chairman. We're going to talk to Tom Donahue of the Chamber of Commerce in a minute about what he's calling a techlash, and that is a backlash against big tech companies in the face of ongoing hearings on the Hill. How much of a danger is that?
Well, I just think there's so much that goes on in our lives now that relates to online platforms. We're going to have a hearing next week on extremism online. And obviously, if you talk to our intelligence community, they will tell you that, particularly in certain parts of the world, social media is about the only media that people have access to. So it's a right target for radicalization, for mobilizing, terrorism. And so what we're trying to do is just get some of these answers and to make sure that the tech community is participating in trying to solve some of these problems. But I don't think there's any sort of a backlash. Frankly, I think in some ways what the FCC is doing with respect, for example, to net neutrality is to lessen the hand of government regulation and use that lighter touch that enables the investment that continues to fuel what has been a remarkable explosion of productivity in our economy as a result of what we've seen with the internet. So we want to see more of that, not less. We want to see more investment, not less. But we also think that the community needs to be responsive to questions that are raised, particularly on some of these legitimate issues. And when you're talking about national security and radicalization, that to me is a very important issue that we're going to be dealing with for some time to come.
Senator, hope you'll come back and give us progress on whether the company gives you answers to those questions. Thanks again.
Thank you. Good to be with you guys. Thanks.